Hello and welcome to Heroes and Humans of Football. My name is Mehreen Khan.
And I'm Simon Cooper. This is the football show where we take the hero and we show you the human.
From Johan Cruyff to Megan Rapinoe.
And from George Best to Kylian Mbappe.
This is the Human Football Podcast.
Last week's episode was on Leo Messi and how after nearly 20 years, Argentinians finally came to love the greatest player of all time. If you haven't already, please be sure to check it out.
Hello and welcome to Heroes and Humans of Football, where we have a slightly different episode than usual. Rather than looking at the life of a single person in football, today we're talking about a national team, and a very special national team because they're the only national team in the game that's not recognised by the sport's governing body FIFA. This is the story of the Afghanistan's women's football team, a non-team, who according to FIFA don't actually exist. And that's because after the Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan in 2021, football's governing body have refused to recognise the women's team, who were banned from playing football in the country and whose players are now mostly scattered across the world in exile in Europe and Australia.
And to me, their stories are the most surprising that I have heard in football.
I would say the Afghan women's football team are probably the closest thing to footballing heroes that you can really get. In this episode, we'll be hearing from the woman who built the team from scratch, Khalida Popal, who's written a book, My Beautiful Sisters, about the trials and tribulations of playing football as a woman in Afghanistan.
The book is a full recommend, by the way, from Heroes and Humans.
And we'll also be hearing from a number of current players who are living outside of Afghanistan in exile and are part of a 3-year-long campaign to get recognition from FIFA for their status as the Afghan women's national team. Before we speak to Khalida, Simon, you've got some stats for us.
Yes, the Afghan women's national team were founded in 2007 by Khalida Popal and others, 6 years after the American invasion of Afghanistan deposed the ruling Taliban. And the women's national team played their first major tournament in 2010 against regional teams like India, Pakistan, Nepal, the Maldives. And for years, the team was held up as an example of the newfound freedom for women in this ultra-conservative Islamic country. But in 2018, the team and the Afghan football authorities were engulfed in a sexual abuse scandal where senior figures, including the president of the Afghan Football Association, Karamuddin Karim, were accused by players of sexual, physical and emotional abuse. Karim was later banned for life and fined by FIFA in 2019. Then, in the summer of 2021, the US very hastily withdraws from Afghanistan. Many of us remember the pictures of Afghans trying to hang on physically to departing planes in their desperation to get out of this country as the Taliban takes over. The women's team is in extreme danger because the Taliban hate women's football, and they face the choice of fleeing or risking being killed and arrested. When the Taliban take power, they ban all women's sport and they ban adolescent girls from attending school or university. FIFA now refuses to recognise the Afghan women's national team, which means it cannot formally represent the country, play official matches, or get funding from the governing bodies of football.
And to help us tell the story of the Afghan women's team, we're joined by Khalida Popal, the woman who actually founded the team in 2007. She's a former player, a former coach, and was the first woman to be ever appointed in Afghanistan's Football Federation. Khalida, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
Maybe we start completely at the beginning. What was it like growing up in Afghanistan before the Taliban came to power?
It was beautiful. It was different, like any other young kid running around with the brothers. We're having no sister. Tomboy, which I don't like the name, but that's what is used people to call me in my neighborhood. I loved playing sport, street sport, and playing football in streets and being around the other kids and enjoyed the time, even though it wasn't simple as it is in the Western world for the kids growing up in the countries where they are. It was civil war, it was still war going on, but I had a little time of my childhood in the streets of Kabul.
Khalida, can you tell us how you first encountered football?
Football came in my life quite natural, and because in Afghanistan, football is a national game, and It's a game that's known for everybody, in no matter which social level you are or economical level. Street football is everywhere. So I started playing sport with, especially football, with my brothers in streets of Kabul.
Who are some of your favorite players or people that you'd inspire to be like?
We were not so exposed to the Western world or through media. It wasn't like really big deal in Afghanistan to have access to international medias, but street football, I think, was something for us. We hear the name of Maradinho and some of others that I can't remember.
They were very far away. You didn't really
We were very
see them.
far away.
Yeah.
We didn't know that actually outside the streets of Kabul, people actually play football. It's a game that can be played in our stadiums. We had our little world in the streets.
So the Taliban take over Afghanistan in the mid-90s and your family become refugees. The family then heads back to Afghanistan after 2001 when the Taliban are disposed following the US invasion. You come back to the country and to Kabul. What's changed, and is your love for football still around now that you're getting into your adolescent years?
Growing up from age of 9, we were refugee in Pakistan, and that's where the war took our childhood from us and our identity, and we started getting a new identity. And then the country was again some sort of freedom in Afghanistan, and there was some hope, especially for my parents, to get back to Afghanistan and not have this title of refugee. So we returned back home, where I still remember the old streets of Kabul was bombed and dark, and it was quite destroyed city, and women were still scared. And there was in these streets of Kabul still people, especially women, were under burqas, and I couldn't see more young girls in my age, and that was scary, and I was confused, and I was stressed, and I was also scared of why I am returning back to a country where women are so scared. But I had to live, and I love being active, and sport is part of our family's culture, and especially with my siblings, my brothers, we always played sport, any sport. But football come back to my life, and we got back to streets and started playing football. But this was different, because this time I was more an adult, or more a teenager. My body was more identified as a girl, as a woman, and that's where the interference of neighborhood started, and where they keep pushing me and telling me, and especially my brothers and the boys that were playing with me in the streets, to not play football because I belong to the kitchen. That's what they were telling me. You have to learn. That's what one of the women from the neighborhood said. You have to learn. Now it's your time. You have to learn how to cook and wash. They will not come for a proposal for their son if they find out that you are playing still in the streets with the boys. Go to the room, to the house, and learn how to do all the kitchen work. That's what the words they told me, the sentences. And that was a tough one.
But you were remarkably defiant, and despite all of these naysayers, you decided that you were going to set up a girls' team at your school, and you managed to find other girls who loved football just as much as you, and you would write in the book about sort of your secret training sessions. How are you able to sort of push back people's criticisms enough to say that actually I'm gonna do something with this football thing, and we're gonna do it in school, and I'm gonna find people just like me who enjoy it just as much as I do?
Growing up in a family where it's very supportive, my family is quite supportive. It's like it was like a safe bubble for me. But getting out, the resistance against the inclusion of women in society and participation in society was a tough one. And that's where I was challenged, and I didn't want to just follow what the society want me. I wanted to decide for myself what I want, and why should a woman in my neighborhood or a man in our neighborhood decide where I belong to? And I wanted to decide for myself. And when they took the love, the only passion, the only time that I was enjoying life was playing with those boys, and they took that away from me. And when they pushed me, I really resisted, and I remember what I did was like scary, it was risky. First I went undercover and I pretend that I'm a boy. I start playing with another team, with the boys team. Only the coach knew, because he knew that and the passion I had. But then when they discovered, then I had to stop. And the reason I stopped was also because the boys who played with me and allowed me to play, they were a lot under pressure also from the society. And I said to myself, I'm not giving up. I will figure out how to play in this game and I'll continue. When I faced the challenge, I realized that maybe there is more girls like me who wants to break all this tradition thinking and play the game that they love. I will find those girls, and maybe that will be in my school. So I started going to my school, campaigning and getting girls, playing in a secretly outside in the eyes of people, and at times that where there wasn't rush hours in school, because I wanted to feel freedom, and the freedom was on the pitch. The 1 hour where I was pushing everything aside. The only thing I was thinking about was that ball that was rolling and my teammate and the noise and all the fun that we had.
You mentioned the noise. It's very striking in the book. At some point, you decide to play silent football because it's too dangerous to make a noise for girls playing football.
When we played in a schoolyard, it was girls' school. It was surrounded with the walls. And when we played, the first rule was that we will keep this hidden and we will keep the secret, because if the man outside and around the school figure out that we are playing, they may create challenge for us and they may stop us, because this is against our culture, and sport and football was seen against the culture, especially when women played sport. And they always refer to bad girls, bad women, or non-Islamic or brainwashed women, Western brainwashed women who is bringing a Western culture in Afghanistan. So we wanted to kind of be protective of each other and not create a noise where people if from other side of the school figure out that we play football. But it's so difficult when you play football. It's just so difficult to keep your emotions hidden and not to scream and cheer and laugh and cry and yell. We couldn't manage to do that, and unfortunately it didn't take a long time when they figure out.
Yeah, there's this very harrowing story where there are some local men who do discover the girls playing football. Tell us what happens.
There was one time, I think one of us scored a goal and we screamed, and there was a group of men, young men, the other side of the wall, heard our voice, and they found out that we are playing football. They jumped from the wall and came to the pitch where we were playing, and they were running towards us. They were threatening us. They were calling bad names. One of them, I still remember his face. He took the knife and he took the ball and destroyed that ball before our eyes. We were just looking and we were too scared, and we couldn't manage to fight back to take that ball, which is quite emotional for me. Every time I talk about this, I call the ball that we had as a magic ball. And because the minute that the ball was rolling, it was keeping us happy, and we were happy. And they took our school bags and destroyed our books and told us that we belong to the kitchen. Women cannot walk properly. How dare they play football? It's the man's game. But that was also a turning moment for me and a waking moment for me, that it's actually the challenges that we face, it's beyond football. And that was a turning moment. That was the moment for me where football became a tool for me, and naturally I become an activist.
These girls who play with you, some of them get into trouble at home when their family finds out they're playing. And there's one in particular, a girl I think who had learned football in Italy as a refugee. And that is very harrowing, but I think is a story that tells people the kind of meaning of football to girls in Afghanistan. Could you tell the story of this girl?
When the more we become public and our activism or like our football become more public and people found out that we are playing football, there was more pressure from the families. And some of our players, our teammates were secretly from the families were playing football. But when their families found out that they are playing football, they stopped their daughters to play football. And there are many cases we had, many examples. One particular example was this good teammate of mine, and still I have the picture of her eyes in my mind, that when she said that my family figured out that I'm playing football, they are stopping me. I don't know how to convince my parents, how to convince my brother and father to get them to accept and allow me to play football. My mother, who is also the physical education teacher, and she was great supporter of us, and she was one of the main reasons that we had the support from her, and our movement continued. So I took my mom with me and a couple of girls in our team, and we said, we are going to talk with your brother and father. And we went to them and we started having conversation. And my mom, because she was a school teacher and she was older and respected, so she said that my daughter is playing and I'm allowing my daughter to play. It's a safe environment. Let your daughter to play because she has talent. She was a good footballer. She was a goalkeeper. She loved football. She learned football in Italy as a refugee. And she was passionate for this game. And the parents started yelling and screaming and kicking us out from their house. And they didn't allow her, my teammate, to continue playing football. And then at some point she also stopped going to school. The right was taken from her. And there are so many others in the book that I have mentioned. And there is one who suicided and lost her life.
Because she wasn't allowed to play.
When the family found out that she's playing football, she was punished. She lost her right to go to school, to have any freedom. She was not allowed to play football. She was kept home. And when she lost everything, she ended up her life, and it was too late for us to help her, but we lost her.
I'm sorry.
You describe, as you get older, as a woman, as a girl, you attract more scrutiny, you attract more barriers from school authorities, from society. But somehow you keep fighting and you end up establishing the Afghan women's national team despite all these challenges. How does that happen?
When we were attacked by the man with the knife and they took the ball from us, and I as mentioned that it was a turning moment for me, and I had the choice in that time to give up, go home, do what the rest is doing. And then the other choice was, no, I will stand up and I will change things for me, but also for other girls in my community and society. So to continue the movement, because I always say that football for us has been always a movement. It turned from playing for the sake of the game to something greater, and a greater purpose for us was to stand for our right, but also stand for the women's right in our country, and to be the voice for our voiceless sisters who never owned and who never had the privilege of owning their voices. Being an activist, a feminist in a country like Afghanistan, it doesn't work like it is in the Western world, where we say this was our right, women and men are equal. It doesn't work like that, because you need to speak the same language where people, especially men, understand that. You need to be very smart in a tricky way to be able to get your word and what you want on the table and make things happen. And that is to find a smart way to not talk about equality, to not talk about feminism and activism, to figure out what is the best intention, what especially in man football, back that time in Afghanistan Football Federation, they wanted money so badly. They had a bad image. They wanted to have a good image in the society, and we wanted to have permission to be recognized as a national team, because with that permission we could get more attention and an allowance, because the whole structure was continued, and we did it with our own resources, but we wanted their stamp. What we offered was that there is a whole Western world's attention in Afghanistan.
This is after the Americans had invaded.
Yeah. So that was the conversation about the recognition of the national team of Afghanistan, the formation of Afghanistan women's national team, because we continued our journey and our movement, our campaign. We managed to get so many women and girls in football and sport. So the league started, but it wasn't official league. It was between the schools, the competition between schools and school teams. So we started everything, but what we wanted to do is the next step for us was to have a national team, a recognized national team.
Yeah, I just want to say you must be one of the only people alive who's actually created a national team. Could you just talk us through how you did that? You create the Afghan women's national team, you and a couple of teammates.
For us, it was more than just playing football. It became a mission that we are going to play football. We are going to use this game as a tool to change the mindset, to stand for our sisters, and to be an activist for our sisters in Afghanistan. And that's how we got more women and girls into football, and they started their own teams. We had pocket monies from our families, so we started collecting our pocket monies, and instead of buying snacks and stuff, we were buying footballs. We were buying gears to support a team in a school to have their own team. And then we started a conversation with the Afghanistan Football Federation. So we reached out to the Afghanistan Football Federation saying, listen, we have so many women footballers started playing football. We have coaches. We have the whole league structured. We are running the whole federation without you. But what we want is your recognition. We want you to come and support and help us, because without that name, we cannot be officially league, we cannot have an official national team. And we already had selected the best players out of the league. And so the last negotiation with Afghanistan Football Federation was that we give you all the credit. We do everything by ourselves. We never take credit. We will say that it's the Afghanistan Football Federation did it. We will not ask for money. We will find the resources. You take the money, because there was funds for development of women in society from the Western world. There was also from the football. There was some budget for women. But then we said we give up everything. You take that, but instead you give us the name and recognition. They found this as a best deal. When we got the recognition to play for the national team of Afghanistan, it was not easy. First, all the equipment and resources we had to find out ourselves. Playing and traveling abroad wearing the national jersey and wearing the badge was the best and most beautiful moment in our life, with all the challenges we faced. I always describe this as I don't know, I never played in a World Cup, but standing under the name of the national team of Afghanistan, seeing the flag of your country, the national anthem that was played for us in abroad when we played in team tournament abroad, and having the badge of the national team on our chest was the best moment. It felt like, for me, if I played for the World Cup and won the World Cup, it felt like the same, because it was like a World Cup. When legends describe how tough it is to play in World Cup, to get all the way there, with the challenges we faced, and we managed to prove that we are able to stand together and change that mindset and prove the people wrong, that women belong to everywhere, not just to the kitchen. that was the best, beautiful moment for us. And that's where we start crying when the national team anthem started. We felt like almost winning.
However, setting up the national team is just the beginning of your struggles, because running the Afghan women's national team is not like any other kind of operation. You describe how difficult it is doing trips abroad, the fact that you think you're being spied on at many points. And then there's also the figure of the head of the Football Federation, Keramuddin Karim, somebody who's a constant in the book and someone who you have a close relationship with because he's effectively the man giving you the permission to play and to tour and to go abroad. Describe a little bit about just some of the difficulties of actually managing a team full of girls, most of whom have never left the country, who are celebrated in the West, but your day-to-day realities are actually very, very difficult.
Playing with the national team title brought also attention to us. The international world and media was writing about us, and we got the attention. There was photos were everywhere, and media started talking about the women of Afghanistan playing football abroad. But that brought more pressure, more challenge to us, and more risk towards our lives. When we returned back, many of our players, our teammates didn't manage to get back to the team because there was pressure from the family, and they had to stop playing football. And our faces were recognized, meaning that we lost more of our freedom to be able to walk in the streets without being harassed and abused, and without facing violence from extremists in the society. There were many times that people throw dust and stones and garbage towards us, saying that we are brainwashed and we are bad women. Those were the challenges that we faced, but we didn't give up. And beside that, we had also the president of Afghanistan Football Federation that he really used and manipulated us in a way that he used that credit as well as showing that women, like all the work that we were doing so hard, and people were seeing the results. But then he was more corrupt. He was abusing the power, and he started abusing the players. First time I discovered about a culture of abuse going on in Afghanistan Football Federation, where the former president of Afghanistan Football Federation, Karim, was the founder and the leader of that culture. Where some of the players came to me and exposed and said that what they are going through. And then everything changed once again in my life, because this time when I joined the national team, my role was different. And the whole idea was to prepare the team to play for the World Cup qualification. And I've felt that this is the right moment. The team is going forward and the challenges is over. But this time it was something dark and different. And that was this culture where some of the players, when I started the investigation to go deeper, to understand what's going on, I found out that in Afghanistan Football Federation, where the president's office is, Karim has a secret room where he forced some of the players to sleep with him. He raped, he sexually, mentally abused the players. And young girls, minors, and we lost many players because every time we had the training camp, some of the new players were in, some of the players who were talented stopped playing football. So that was also something that I was curious why. And I started reaching out, and the more I reached out, the more stories, horrible stories of how those women came to football and they with the hope and dream to play for their country. And their dreams ended up in the dark room of the president of Football Federation. And this culture expanded to the people, some of the coaches who are involved with the team. And the horrible stories what they faced. Once again, I feel like I was in a way manipulated, because once again I was doing everything possible to rebuild. And he was taking the credit and showing that how the women's football is doing great. But behind the scenes, it's all the horrible things that were happening to the girls, to the young women. I'm grateful that I didn't give up. I continued the fight. I can never go back what happened to the girls to change it. I'm happy that at least together with my team, we managed to bring the case to FIFA to get some sort of justice for our girls, and at least stop him for continuing doing what he was doing.
And in 2019, Kareem was banned by FIFA for life for having any involvement in football. He was also fined for breaching the FA code. And you worked with the Guardian journalist to help expose a lot of these stories, which is how they came to international attention. And it was in this environment of much more scrutiny, because people now know that there are women in Afghanistan playing football, where you have to leave the country in very extreme circumstances because your life is under threat and you end up seeking asylum in Denmark. What happened?
I started, for me, playing for the national team and being the captain for the Afghanistan women's national team. And then later on, when I became the head of women's football department and became the first director and first women employee in the Afghanistan Football Federation's history, it brought more attention. But also my voice became louder and stronger, and I got the platform and I started talking beyond football. I started talking about corruption and how it actually impacted women's life and women's contribution to society. I started talking about the challenges, the violence and patriarchal culture that is taking away women's rights and the violence that women were facing. And I started saying the names of people, leaders who are involved in that, which means that I have called for the risk towards my life. And I started receiving phone calls, death threats, messages. People were following me. There was a time that I couldn't go even outside of my home without being guarded. There was so much pressure, and my life was at great risk. And I was blamed as someone who were against the national security and who wants to bring the non-Islamic culture in Afghanistan and promote a non-Islamic culture amongst women in Afghanistan, and in a way scaring people. And that put my life in a great risk, where I was attacked by gunmen in the street of Kabul.
They were in a car and they were trying to kill you.
I was in a car with my driver and a guard that I had in that time, and I was on my way home, where for a few days I was followed by unknown people. And then there was a time that a car followed the car I was in, and it was a traffic in Kabul, where I saw the few men with the gun got out of the car and started running towards the car that I was in. Because I was always alert and alarmed, I always gave this credit to the traffic of Kabul that saved my life. I managed to run away and escape, and they couldn't manage to get me, but they attacked and they wanted to shoot me. I managed to escape and hide. And that was the moment for me that was getting really dangerous to stay in Kabul and to be alive there. I had to leave.
You jump on a flight to India, an emergency flight, and you don't have any support from, as you already mentioned, your football federation, who don't protect you. But there is a couple of sponsors, one of whom the Danish company Hummel, who is the sponsor of the Afghan women's and men's national team, and they sort of take care of you, and you end up eventually in Denmark seeking asylum. And you're sort of living in exile as a woman and the face of the Afghan women's football team. And then a few years later, in the summer of 2021, there is the very hasty US exit from Afghanistan after nearly 2 decades being in the country. It's a summer that most of us saw play out on our televisions of people trying desperately to get out of the country, and many of your players were in that position. How did you get them out of the country at a moment where we knew the Taliban would most likely be returning to power and would take a very dim view on the role of women in society and in particular women's football?
Back in 2021, summer was the horrible time once again for the women of Afghanistan and for all of us. When the country collapsed, the government surrendered, which came as a surprise for us and shocking as well. because we never trusted, as women of Afghanistan, we never trusted the corrupt government of Afghanistan, but we did trust the Western world, the great words that they used to standing with the women of Afghanistan. We are there for women of Afghanistan. We will not let the women of Afghanistan to go back to the dark times when the first time Taliban took over. We had some sort of hope and trusted the Western world that they will support and they will not let the women of Afghanistan down, and they will not let us fail. But unfortunately, once again, the women of Afghanistan faced challenges and some sort of betrayal from both the government, but also from the Western world. And our players who were activists, who played football, the whole foundation that we started as a foundation, the foundation of football, to be a place for our activism, a platform to stand for our right, but also challenge the ideology of Taliban. We called Taliban as our enemies, and our young girls stood up in medias and challenged and criticized those ideologies. And now they were just by themselves, without any protection and support. And the enemy that we always called Taliban as an enemy, they were out there.
And these women had become visible as footballers, so they were in a very dangerous position.
Their identities were out there, their photos, their videos, their faces. They were well known in the country. The most dangerous, and what was scaring me, was not only the Taliban. Of course, for Taliban, it would take a little bit time, that the man who come down from the mountains to find out the place, but was more the man in the neighborhood who were really fighting for a long time against their activism through football. They had more power because now they got a government that was supporting such ideology.
They could expose you.
And they could expose. And that's where I was so scared. I had to jump in action. I had to find help. And first I was telling myself, living in Denmark, being in Denmark in a very protective country as a woman where I live, thinking, what can I do? What is my power? How can I save my girls who are stuck in Afghanistan, they have no way to get out? I have no economic power, no political power, and I don't own a plane to get them from Afghanistan. And one thing that I remembered and kept telling myself, I do have power, and that's my voice. I always use that to be the voice for voiceless. And I do have platform. I started sharing how worried I am about our players who are stuck there, about their identities. And I started also using that platform, calling the national team players to burn their jerseys, to take down all the photos, everything, to hide themselves. And I started using again media as a tool to reach out to governments. And within few hours, we managed to have a team from across the world who came together, who lobbied governments, and we managed to get the first team out, the national team of Afghanistan, the senior women's national team in Australia, and then the youth teams in the UK and other European countries and Canada. But it was horrible situation what they've been through.
I mean, that part of the book is astonishingly gripping. You guys, for weeks, you're working the phones and you get a lot of people out, and some people can't get out and they stay with their families. And I found your reflections at the end of the book very bittersweet. So you say, I did so much to give women this opportunity to play football, and now sometimes I feel I put them in danger. You are not sure whether it was the right thing to have done to have got them into football. How do you, am I saying that right? How do you feel about that now?
It is, it's a feeling that I live with. It has been always like that. Because when you start a movement, you're passionate about, but it's also, you become a naturally leader because people listen to you and follow. And it comes also, leadership has its responsibility, comes with responsibility. And I care about people's life and about the situation that they get through this. And I have been living with the guilty feeling, and that's just a honest feeling, because yes, I feel happy and proud of how the movement changed the lives of people and the perception and everything in the society. But at the same time, Karim used that opportunity. If I wasn't introducing football to the women's life, maybe some of the girls wouldn't be raped. But I did that. And I get so hurt. But at the same time, I feel it's the feeling that will never leave me alone. They were introduced to football, but then Taliban came. They called Taliban as their enemies. But then Taliban came, and they had to say goodbye to their families, and some of them, they did not manage to say goodbye. And they had to escape because they played football. They were activists. And they are going through difficult situation mentally, and they are dealing with guilt because they are having some sort of freedom, but it's not freedom because their families are back home or under pressure. It is a constant battle that mentally you go through. And I always encourage people to not give up, continue activism, but be aware that you will face these challenges if you care, because it's so difficult to turn down that noise that comes from inside that says, I wish I didn't start. But then you see the impact, and now that women who got out of Afghanistan have stronger voice. And I'm not alone anymore. They are the one taking this movement forward, and they are the one who have not given up.
Players of yours who are now in Australia, in England, elsewhere in Europe.
Yes, and they are playing football. They're standing for the women's right of, and also they are great examples and role models for not only the women of Afghanistan, but the refugee women around the world. And that makes me happy, and that gives me a power that gives me feeling it was the right thing to start.
Khalida, thanks for sharing those stories. Now we're going to hear from some players in the squad. And stick around after the break, where we will continue our conversation with Khalida about the team's campaign for recognition by FIFA.
My name is Misal Sadat, and I currently live in Melbourne, Australia. I was part of the Afghanistan women's national soccer team, played as a defender.
My name is Fatima Buladi. I live in the US right now. I used to play soccer as a youth national 17 back in Afghanistan. Now I play for my varsity high school team. I used to play forward, but now I play defender.
So the biggest obstacle that I faced playing football in Afghanistan was the community, because the majority of our community believes that sports are not for women. Obviously in Afghanistan, if you were a girl who's playing sport, you were a bad girl.
The society and the norms were it was hard and strict for girls to play soccer. So we had some national bags that we could wear. They were red. So because of that, when people were seeing our bags and stuff, they were saying some not good words. So the most difficult part was to get into the practices.
When Taliban took over Afghanistan, I received a call from my mom and I rushed home. I felt so depressed. We were hiding at home for a week or so, and specifically the time that they took out that big flag that every country has one in their capital, they took it down, and I cried a lot that day because my nationality and my flag means a lot to me, and as a national player, I used to represent that nationality. I used to represent that flag. I used to look at that flag, hearing the national anthem while playing for the national games. It was pretty painful, to be honest.
When the Taliban came, I was in a practice, and one of my brother called me to come back home as quickly as possible. I actually cried for 3 days when I was there. And then I could not eat anything. I was in my room and didn't go outside because it was hard, and my family weren't allowing us to go outside. Or it was a bit hard to feel this that we were not able to do like we used to do. It was hard to do as well before the Taliban, but it's gonna get harder or none after them. So it was not a good feeling.
The situation currently with the Afghan women's national team is that we are a women's team in exile, which the whole team is currently in Australia except one player or two players that we have in other countries. But when we arrived in Australia, after a while, with the help of Khalida Popal, our former captain, we sent him an email a letter to FIFA asking for the recognition, but then they say to get the recognition from the Afghanistan Football Federation, which was a pretty obvious answer to us because Taliban are in control of the country and they're not letting women to go to school, work, park or anywhere for the 3 years now that they're in power. How could they give us the recognition to represent the country? They do not want us alive. So how can someone ask us to go and ask for recognition from them? And then we started our journey of taking action, and we started a petition that took over 100,000 signatures, and we had so many politicians on our side, as well as activists like Craig Foster, Malala Yousafzai. We are still fighting for our right to get the recognition from FIFA and to play as an Afghanistan women's national soccer team again. My message for the FIFA would be that why should we allow gender inequality in football, and why shouldn't we make an exception? If the rule is making discrimination, why shouldn't we break that rule?
The Afghan women's national team represent more than just a group of athletes, so they embody the resilience and determination of Afghan women who have overcome immense challenges to pursue their passion for the sport. So by recognizing our team and granting the opportunity to compete internationally, FIFA has the power to uphold and empower Afghan women.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write a million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
This is a reminder that you're listening to the Heroes and Humans of Football podcast with me, Mehreen Khan.
And me, Simon Cooper.
Currently, as it stands, FIFA does not recognise the Afghan women's national team because formally you are prohibited from playing football by the government of Afghanistan, the Taliban. What kind of message do you want to get across to FIFA? And for our audience listening who'd like to help, how can they help in the process of getting recognition for yourself, your players, and for the team?
My story and the book is the whole story of our challenges, but also our resilience for change. We have given enough sacrifices, and our generations and younger generation, they've given so much to this game to keep the beauty and the power of this game and to be examples. And we have done enough and more than enough from our side. What we want is the governing bodies to take action, what they are saying about equality, gender equality and diversity, about women's rights as a human right. Today, what is happening to the women of Afghanistan is against all the statutes of FIFA. And FIFA has not taken any action. What we want is from FIFA to recognize our team, to allow our team to play, but also give a strong statement to any group like Taliban who says women belong to the kitchen. By standing with us, you actually support us, telling those groups that women belong to everywhere around the world. I don't know how much we have to more do to prove that we deserve that recognition. We deserve to have our platform, to continue our activism, because that is used to be the voice for our voiceless sisters. And there are so many women who have the hope that we will raise their voices. And that platform is taken away from us. And we want from people from around the world to support us, to raise awareness about what our team has gone through, to share our stories, to call FIFA, to take action, to call governing bodies of sport, to not turn their faces when a team, when a group like us face the challenges. The world is turning in a really, really challenging place. Today is Afghanistan, tomorrow is another country. Where is the governing bodies of sport standing?
You've written to FIFA to campaign for recognition. What have you heard back from them?
Unfortunately, I have not heard anything from FIFA. They don't want to have any conversation with us. The only thing we heard, it was through media, that they are in close contact with the Afghanistan Football Federation. They want the Football Federation of Afghanistan to recognize the team, to be able to, so then they will allow us. So they are actually playing the ball towards the Afghanistan Football Federation a federation that is controlled by Taliban. That Taliban don't want women to actually study how they will allow women to play football. And this is what, according to Taliban, what we are doing is against the Sharia law.
But hopefully by sharing your story on this platform and many others, that we can try and drum up some attention to get FIFA to change their position. Khalida, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
If you want to keep up with the campaign for recognition from the Afghan women's national team, you can follow them on X at AfghanWNT or follow Khalida Popal on LinkedIn.
Thank you for listening to Heroes and Humans of Football. For more information, go to our website at heroesandhumans.com.
And follow us at Heroes and Humans on all social platforms.
Next week's episode is on Johan Cruyff, the man who invented modern football, my childhood hero, and in particular, the man of the 1974 World Cup. We ask, how did he not win it? It's a beautiful and agonising story. Please listen.
This show was developed by Immaterial and produced by One Fine Play. Matt Cheney is the series producer. Kazra Firuzia is the editor and producer. We have been your hosts, Mehreen Khan
and Simon Cooper.
And this has been Heroes and Humans of Football.